Hello, this is Dr. Scott Young, and today we're going to do kind of an interesting conversation. We're going to talk a lot about what the Bible says about the US dollar to the US note. We're going to show you some real interesting things that I probably bet you haven't really seen. Coming right up. So let me share this here. So this is, this is one of my first videos of NESARA. And so I'm just going to play in the background. I'm not going to really do it because it's actually my video. So I really want to do it. This is actually when I weighed like, 30 pounds more. So what I was trying to do is show a little bit, talk a little bit more about NESARA and the gold standard in the Bible. And at the time, I got like 81,000 views. And so, and it was like, whoa, okay. Really kind of getting a lot of information there. So, um, and so, people were really kind of interested in what was happening in there with that too. So there's a lot of information that was kind of occurring there. And I'm gonna kind of bring up the screen here in a second. So let me pull that off there. So hold on one second. I've got to reshare the screen here in a second. And we're going to pull this out and pull this back in here. So what I wanted to kind of do, I was doing something I do it's Sunday morning, by the way. If you haven't seen, it's Sunday morning. It's 8:30 in the morning. And I tend to get up pretty darn early. This morning, 4:30. So I kind of got up and I spent some time with the Lord, but I kind of want to show you what I actually do. So I'm going to show you an interesting way. I've really never shown you on the screen what I actually do when I go through and read the Bible. Now, most of the time, what I do is I get my coffee. This isn't exactly it, but I get my coffee. I sit by the fire, and gas log fire. Sorry, let me stop my camera here. I sit by the gas log fire, and I will just warm up my back, just trying to get it, to feel a little bit better. And I'm sitting there, shaving, but I'm also praying. And then a lot of times I'm really talking to the Lord, or I'm just quiet. And if I get off tangent, like I'm thinking about, a game, or I'm thinking about a circumstances, or I'm off on something else, kind of stupid, then I will change positions. It's something I've learned over the years, or the year, excuse me, of doing this particular thing. It's not like I haven't ever done this, but it's just something I've thought about with that too. On Sundays specifically, I really sit down and get really hard in the word. Doesn't mean I don't do it in other days. It's just something I really get a little bit harder with that too. But I want to show you something that I do. Now, I get on my iPad Bible, and I get really hard. Now, this is an interesting way. I'm going to show you how I actually do this, because I can sync it up on my computer here. So, and I really don't get on my computer, but this is kind of cool to see it on the computer screen here. So you're not going to be able to see this perfectly. I'm not going to, you're going to be looking at this. If you're looking at an iPhone, you're like, I can't see it. I'm sorry. I can't make you see everything perfectly. So you might want to look on a computer screen. It's never perfect. I can't make anything super, super perfect, but you'll get the idea. So anyway, but let me give you a couple ideas. This is called the Olive Tree Study Bible. What I tend to do is that I will, I'm going to give you a couple organizational points. You buy this thing for free. You can kind of come over here. And what I tend to do, I particularly bought. That you can do the free version of this, but I always recommend that you get a Strong's concordance with this. That tends to be anywhere from a, I don't know, $10 to $30 kind of purchase. I don't remember. I haven't kept up with that. So I will buy that kind of, I would always buy that version. Okay. And so I have that downloaded so that I can then see what the lookup of that particular word is. Now I went years ago and looked through those words to figure out what those words actually mean. And so that I'm looking at foundation. So we're looking at laid that foundation. We're looking at, how that word actually means, where that word also extra occurs. There's a lot of cool little extra things that you can kind of see. So you can see that variant. Now, a couple things that I do, I tend to like go, the purple, yellow kind of thing. And I just kind of variant my setup there. I will also highlight where I'm at in that particular area. But this is something I want to show you a little bit closer here. These are all of my notes kind of thing. Just to give you an idea of how many eschatology notes that I have, is that I will have, just an immense number of notes on particular areas. And I will move those notes around. For instance, on the church kind of thing, I might move that around, or I might look at that a little bit closer. We're talking about the completed feast or whatever that might be. So I'm really spending a lot of time on that particular topic. Exodus, plagues, fear, whatever that might be. But you can also do subcategories within that. So you can add categories in there. So what happens in there is that, and I'm going to go over here more specifically to an area, real interesting area that I actually have, is do not understand. I don't get that part. So what I will do is that come over here and go, okay, on this particular verse here, so it will give you that particular verse. You can kind of click on that verse, and then it will say, I'm not sure what that means. Could it be referring to this? Could it be referring to that? I'm saying to myself, I don't get it. Like, why is it that way? And what I will do is go backward in time, over the years, maybe a year later, 6 months later, whatever, as I come back over that verse, I'm like, and I'll see it over here noted. There's a little note kind of category here. And I go, what? Well, I'll click on that later on my iPad, and I'll like, wow. And then God will kind of go, let me show you what that's about. And it's just a cool way of studying the Bible with that too. And most people people will get, no, I'm gonna tell you people, you have to have the King James Version. They're gonna get really mad at me. Stop. Okay, I'm gonna teach you something in sign. Stop. Okay. Other people are gonna go, you should underline, and stop with the legalism here. Okay. There are a million ways of doing this. I'm sharing with you one potential possibility. Okay. I'm just sharing with you. God doesn't care as long as you are analyzing and looking at the Bible and spending time with Him. There's a million ways of doing this. If you if you were in college, and you had a couple different ways of studying, the professor's not going to get all upset about that issue. So I'm going to go over here and show you something that I do. So I have the money categories, and so I have some different areas, and one is on NESARA kind of things. Now, one of my favorite areas, and this is what I was hitting on this particular day, is 1 Corinthians 3:13. So I kind of want to show you a little bit about this. If anyone builds on that foundation. Now, what is a building on a foundation? Now, if you don't have a good foundation, a foundation is laid in by Jesus. Now, you're not going to build that foundation, right? If you don't build that, I mean, you're not building that foundation. Jesus is building the foundation. That is um, your salvation. Okay, so that's what that's talking about. But it's fascinating that he says with gold, silver, or costly stones, and then it says wood, hair, stubble. But I want you to see how Paul is talking to the Corinthians here. He's Now, I know that when you see it first, he's talking to in the Greek, but if you really were listening, these are two different types of wordings. Okay, you have gold, silver, and costly stones. That's one type of set of wordings. Those are hard assets. The other ones are wood, hay, or straw. They are meant to be a separate category of fungible assets. Okay, so straw was a usable asset. Okay, I mean when I was growing up, there were a couple different types of time frames that I would bale hay or bale straw. I loved baling straw because it was a lot easier to throw it up from the trailer that we had. My dad would bring down the Bronco, and we would have the trailer in the back, and taking that sucker and shoving it up above, basically a story up, a bale of straw ain't that big a deal. But baling up, hay, it took the guys, which is just me and my dad kind of thing. I loved it when a friend of mine came over, and then he and I could do that together, or it was just me and my dad. And so I'm the one down below, or my dad, was down below, and then I have to like take it. And most of the time we didn't have gloves, so I'm sitting there like cutting my fingers with the hay. So we're talking. I mean, hay obviously has more grip to it, has more stuff to it. So obviously you have hay that you're giving to your horses. For instance, we had a horse and a donkey, and so it has more stuff to it. But yet you would put those on assets. And when it talks about this, it's referencing those related to fire, because it's talking that this is the first part of a sentence. And in the sentence structure, it would be a part of it. So you're going to see here a semicolon. So this is a very complicated sentence, or a complex sentence structure. So you're going to separate between these hard assets that doesn't necessarily burn in the fire. It doesn't mean that they don't. I mean, it would take a higher amount of temperature before those assets actually melt, or would it even change shaping in a fire. Now, obviously, wood, hay, or stubble, I mean, they burn, almost instantaneously. If you get hay or straw, I mean, they're like that in the fire. That obviously you get the idea. So that's why there's a separator between the two. But it's fascinating that Paul utilizes. Now, he could have said any type of metal. I mean, he could have said anything else. And by the way, at the time frame, he could have said anything, any other kinds of metal. No, there wasn't steel, but he could have said bronze, or anything else. But note that he used, at the time frame even, what would have been gold, silver, or costly stones. Those would have been fungible assets. What is a fungible asset? It would have been something that we would use as a monetary unit. In the past, up until frankly the 1700s, or even maybe even up to 1800s, before they really kind of got into mostly or only banking, where we would have a checks, we would have paper assets, kind of thing. Real interesting, because we're going to get into that in a second. Um, we they would have these weighting systems. So at the trading centers, they would, bring their, sheep, and they would sell it. And so you would, they didn't want to have, they would weigh the gold so that someone wasn't just putting a little bit of a gold plating around a hunk of copper or a hunk of rock or something like that, because he could have put rock on that other side, a heavy kind of thing, because a rock doesn't necessarily burn in this way, right? Because he's talking about foundation, which in that time frame would have been some type of rock here, but he's using a monetary kind of thing. So again, monetary value would have wood, would have been hay, would have been straw. I mean, those would have had a value system. Now, they wouldn't have been, they would have been tradable, but these would have had um, a direct gold, gold value we're talking about. Now, when we talk about it for us, I want you to see something even more interesting. He's talking about, for us, when we have this conversation of the gold-backed currency, and I'm going to pull this off the screen. We'll pull it back here in a second. Let me pull it here, because I want you to hear this. And I have this conversation all the time, and even very recently with people, and they're saying, like, I can't tell. I mean, don't you think that, like, the CBDC, excuse me, CBDCs are NESARA? And I'm like, no. I mean, central bank digital currencies are not NESARA. They're just not the same thing. And people can't tell the difference, because here's the thing: their learning isn't on a good foundation. In essence, they haven't built their foundation yet. Or I had another person who started to say some crazy information because she's learned it from a TikTok thing. And she was like, when you go to a redemption center, and are you going to go to a redemption center and sign your name over an NDA and do this? And she was like, and you could, and I think it could be an ND. I mean, and you could have a CBDC. And then she was like going on this like crazy path, and I'm going, and it could be mark of the beast, and I'm like, stop, would you calm down a little bit? I mean, and there's just so many things wrong with what she's saying. She has no foundation in her understanding. And I'm like, you haven't really researched the NESARA thing. Again, you haven't got a foundation. And I tell people all the time, you guys need to like research. I have things on my channel called NESARA Explained. Go research that one to figure out what I'm talking about here. So let's go back into the stream here again. Each one's work will become obvious, for that day will disclose it, because it will be revealed by fire, and fire will test the quality of one's work. If anyone's work he has built survives, he will receive a reward. If anyone's work is burned up, it will be lost, and he will be saved, but yet it will be like an escape through the fire. Don't you yourselves know that you're God's sanctuary? The Spirit of God lives within you. If anyone's If anyone destroys God's sanctuary, God will destroy you. Blah blah blah. It goes on to on there, and then if any one of you thinks he is wise in this age, he must become foolish so that he can become wise. Now, what this is ultimately talking about is talking about um, a couple things. That there are multiple meanings out here, so I do want to kind of share with you. This is a layered approach. Most of the New Testament and Old Testament, by the way, has a onion layered skin approach. That was a really hard one to say. I'm not going to say that one 3 times in a row. But part of it is um, the Gospels, the Word is foolish to the really smart people of the world. I mean, they just go, it's just foolish, right? And yet they're fools because really, when you get down deep into this, their wisdom is stupid because they have lost their real good thought process. That's number one. Number two, this is also talking about the day of your death. When you come down to the day of your death, you are going to go through the fire, okay? The fire of your death. And if you escape through the fire, and maybe you escape through the fire, and what was built of your foundation, you might come through the fire and basically you only had wood, hay, or stubble. You had a foundation, but you had very little else. And you walk into heaven basically naked. See, some people in the world throughout history, and even of this time frame too, they're walking into heaven, pretty much naked, because they really didn't build up treasures in heaven, in essence. Okay, some people have with that too. That's why the first shall be last, the last shall be first. That's a part of this conversation. A third point of this is, a third point of this would be in the tribulation period. When we're talking about the great day of the wrath of the Lamb, this would be very end of the tribulation period when it's talking about the separation of this. Okay. A little bit of this is the separation of the sheep and goat, actually a little bit past the great day of the wrath of the Lamb. The separation of the sheep and goat is sheep and goats is in the first 45 excuse me, the first 45 days of the millennial reign, when there is a separation of the sheep and goats. The sheep will go through the millennial reign in their physical form. Everyone else, we will be resurrected, okay? But they're living through the millennial reign in their physical form. That's the nations, and it's also the Jewish people. They look up and they see their redemption, okay, in essence. And that's a long conversation with that. So, and they at least have their salvation in that way, but they don't have much else because they come to Jesus at the very last second, in essence. That's also what it talks about. Now, so that's a part of this. But guess what? Scripture is so layered in this way. It also, I believe, kind of gives us another level of this. When we see this NESARA piece, because this is talking about money, guys. And by the way, God just doesn't do it just a couple ways. When he gives you things called types and shadows, he's trying to give you references that you can use multiple times in your life. He doesn't just do it once or twice. He does it many, many times. So when we do a type and shadow, it's a very powerful event. So this is another type and shadow because again, we have gold, silver, and costly stones to give you that kind of thing. That is a definite monetary kind of point. And so when we have this is a type of understanding of a US dollar to a US note. So what you got to see here is the US dollar is like the wood, hay, or stubble. Do you catch that? The US dollar is based upon wood, hay, or stubble. There's no there's nothing underneath the foundation. In essence, the foundation is our is our constitution. The EBS is going to like move us into the new constitution. So we walk into that new constitutional kind of nature, okay? And the rest of the people, because we've walked through the fire. And what's going to happen after, the really wicked people, we're not talking about the Hillary or the other ones, that have really been, judged by the Gitmo kind of things. We're not talking about them, okay? We're talking about the low level thugs, okay? They have, and many of you have asked this question, like, what happens, when I have, make up a number, 10,000 bucks, a 500 bucks. I've taken my money out of the bank, because many of you actually have done that. You've taken your money out of the bank, which I kind of told you not to do that. You've heard some of the truthers who made the fear porn and told you to take your money out of the bank. I'm like going, what about the people who didn't know anything about NESARA? You think the white hats are going to screw them? Come on. Come on. What about those people? They're not going to screw all those people, and they're going to lose all of their money and going to wipe all their money out. That would be totally evil of the white hats. No, every single dollar it's going to go 1 to 1. They're going to go from the US dollar to the US note. Simple. Simple, simple, simple. It's not that hard to get, guys. We've known this from the beginning. Only in the last several months have we had truthers try to make stupid stuff up. Sorry, but that's exactly what they've said. Now, and it's because they didn't have a good foundation of understanding. By the way, just use scripture, didn't I? Does that make sense? Because they didn't understand the NESARA teaching. They didn't go back and look at what it actually was talking about. And if you don't understand the foundational teaching of NESARA, you don't get it. That's why I just use the Bible to help you understand something. Okay? Now, let's go into this a little bit closer. So, if a person who's a low-level thug, and let's say that dude is been a drug dealer, and actually Donald Trump talked about this 3, 4, 5 months ago, something like that. And he's doing these real interesting videos. They're like 3, 4 minute long videos. And he's talking about, we already know who you are. And we're going to find you. And so that guy, that NESARA has actually occurred, let's say. Okay? Let's say NESARA has occurred. EBS has occurred. He knows the US dollar has already gone away. The US note needs to be switched. I mean, all of his money's got to be switched over. So what does he do? He's thinking, I've got to go into the bank and switch over. Well, buddy, you ain't going to do it because you're a criminal. And so they're going to do a background check on you. And guess what? Your foundation sucks. When they look at you, you're sitting on wood, hair, stubble, or you have a bad foundation and you're burned up in the fire. So your money is just whoosh, in essence. Okay. And you're sitting over there worried about this kind of stuff. It's because your foundation's fine. Don't worry about that stuff. Your foundation's, you're not a criminal. You don't have to worry about that in that way. I'm not saying you're sitting over there righteous, like you're righteous in Christ. Maybe you are. I don't know that. But you're not a criminal in America or in Spain or whatever that place is. Okay. You're not a criminal. So you're not going to be like judged as a criminal in that way. But you're going to have to switch over your money. But if you're going to walk into a bank and you got like $3 million, they're going to ask you, how come you have $3 million? And you better have a good answer for it. If your background check comes back without something bad, you better have a good answer for that. And so that's why it happens in there. By the way, the Bible's been talking about for a very long time frame. It's just been talking about it in a very oblong way. So hope that helped you out and give you some information about that too. So like to subscribe. I hope that gives you some information. I hope it even helps you understand how I actually study the Bible. So thanks so much.